Well, we're here again in North Carolina with the Lumbee tribe, and I'm lucky enough to or actually threaten or beg Yasikong,
Yeah,
Red Snake, to tell us a brief history of the Lumbee people.
Yasikong. The Lumbee people, I would like to say that you know we go back to the Mound Builder period. Even not too far down the road, we have Town Creek Indian mounds, and there were mounds. We found a lot of small mounds here in Robertson County where I live at, and but I know that we date back to those mound builders, and we know that Cahokia was one of the largest communities in the Ohio Illinois community, and there was at least 50,000 people that lived in that one community, and then that's in the community. That's not counting that was on the outside of that community. I know that our people are part of that community. A lot of people they'll say, "Well, Columbus discovered America," but we know that Columbus never came here. We know that Hernandez de Soto came here before Columbus did. When Hernandez de Soto was a partner with Cortez back when they went into California and down into Mexico, and they settled. Cortez eventually settled what is called Mexico today. But Hernandez de Soto, he ended up breaking off from him, and he went down to go Gulf Coast, and he came into what is Florida today, and we know that he worked his way up through here, and that's just a brief history, just the beginning of the history and the change and contact here. We know that there was a lot of Spanish missions that was set up around here, and then we know that the the English started coming in. First, the French came in here, and they were rivals with the Spanish fighting over this territory. Then the British ended up coming in, and then we know that the French Indian Wars was a part of that. They were fighting over territory, and we know that there was a lot of warfare. We know that there was two smallpox epidemics that decimated a lot of our people. Our people ended up becoming refugees, and this area here, a lot of people don't realize, but this area here, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and parts of Virginia, was the last Indian frontier. So you got a lot of influx of Indian people coming out of the north coming in here, and a lot of them are getting pushed into this area, North Carolina. So, and like I said, 95% of those people were wiped out through smallpox. So in each community, you'll got 4% in each community. So they're coming together, and they're trying to save each other's life, help each other to survive. And that's pretty much how Robertson County became what it is today. We know that the Sherrall Indians, there's three groups of Indian people here in North Carolina. You had the Algonquin, Iroquois, and you had Siouan people. We know that the Algonquins were coastal people. They're related to the tribes up in Virginia. We're related to those tribes. A lot of my ancestors came out of Suffolk, Virginia, and they migrated here, especially on the Brewer side. So they migrated here. I know that on my mother's side, they came out of South Carolina and they migrated off to the Chirals. So you had the Algonquins. They have a relationship with the Algonquins that you find up in Canada, and even heading toward the west, there is a relationship. There's a similarity in the language that they speak. Then we had the Iroquois here. We have two groups of Iroquois here in North Carolina. We have Cherokee and we have Tuscarora. We know that some of those people ended up here too in our communities. We have quite a few Tuscarora people here in our community that are bringing their language back, that are bringing the ceremonial dances back, and then we have the Siouan people. The Siouan people consist of the Catawbas, the Chirals, the Kiawis, Waccamaw Siouan, Wakans. There was Wakans here at one time, which are probably a part of this community and a part of the Catawbas now. So those Siouan languages, plus their language is related to the Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota language. There's a similarity in those languages. When I gave you that name, Yasikon, that name is Catawba language, or this Sherrall language is a dialect. It's an old Siouan dialect that was used here at one time. So all those people started migrating in here into the swamps. You either migrated into the swamps and hid out, or you migrated to the mountains and you hid out. The Cherokees, they went up into the mountains. The ones that didn't get moved west, they went up in the mountains and hid out. The ones here, and there is stories here that Sherman came through here and he was taking native people from here. He had stockades that he had set up here around this area where he was bringing people in, and he was taking those people from here. A lot of our people, they chose to hide out in the swamps till he had moved on out. So we have those stories here too. So we know that the refugees that were left over are the byproduct of those people that were from those smallpox and those wars, and that's how we became a part of this community here.
Now, how did the community survive the Trail of Tears, the Removal Act? Is that by hiding in the swamps?
We hid out in the swamp, and our people, we have always, one commodity that we were really good at was growing tobacco. And the Europeans, they relied heavily on us growing that tobacco. Now you figure in the 1600s, they were sending 1,100 tons of tobacco from here straight to England.
Big money.
The English were doing that. The reason why they would take the tobacco from here and go straight to England, they were holding on to that commodity. So when they got to England, then they'd sell it all out to the world. The world would have to come to them for
Right.
the tobacco, and they got very addicted to the tobacco, so they wanted that tobacco. We would grow a lot of that tobacco. Later on, the Europeans learned how to grow the tobacco, and they didn't really need us that much anymore. But our people have always had a love affair with growing tobacco. We were tobacco farmers. That's one of our part of our culture here is that tobacco, growing that tobacco, having that relationship with that tobacco in that way.
Now, the Lumbee River was referred to as Drowning Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still?
We still refer to it as Drowning Creek.
That's the headwater, right?
It's
Still?
yeah,
Yeah.
still is. Yeah.
Is that anything to do with the Indian Removal Act?
I have heard different stories on that.
That's what I heard.
That they made
where
it.
it came from. But then, as I look at the history, they originally called it the River Drowning Creek anyway. So it wasn't.
It's a
It
very
was already named that.
It's a dangerous river. Normally, our young people, we love to go swimming there. Normally, every year, that river will at least take 2 or 3 people a
Still.
year still in that river because of the way the river is. It doesn't look that strong, but it has an undertow. It has whirlpool action in it, and the water tumbles at the same time. So you got these 3 different elements going on at the same time in that river. Now I've heard that the Europeans would make Indians tread that water till they drowned, so they could save bullets from having to kill them. So, and that's another term I heard that name came from, was
Right.
Drowning Creek. Was they would drown
That was
people.
part of the story I heard afterwards, and then as I talked to another historian, he says, no, it was always named that
Yeah.
because it was so dangerous,
It's a dangerous river.
right from the word go.
Hmm. And it doesn't look that way because the flow is really subtle.
Yeah.
But once you get in there, you'll find out it's a different story.
It's an undertow.
And then what happens when it pulls you under, you'll got all these roots up under there from the trees that's growing on the banks, and you get caught up in them roots, and then it's hard to come out of there.
So to bring us today, what would be your primary struggle to maintain the culture of today?
Our biggest problem, I think, would be is technology, and the way technology is, and it's easier for the young people to just go along with that. And it's a really job. It's a real job to try to maintain your culture, your language, when you got English over here and everything's wrote in English, and you got computers that are all English, and there's nothing that you see in front of you every day about your culture, unless you come to the Boys and Girls Club here in tribal communities. Then you'll see that in those tribal communities.
Yeah, well, what I was hoping you'd mention is that of the next generations or so, it's difficult to get them to climb inward instead of into a computer.
It is.
Because you can climb into a computer and be anybody you want to be.
That's right.
But to be yourself, you still have to turn inward
and,
and find out who lives in here.
yeah, and I think that's my job too, and I think that has to be our job at home is to teach our children. You know, that's cool that you do that, but we got to look within ourselves and say, hey, this is who we are too. For instance, like at my home, when you walk into my house, my brother calls it the red house because when you walk in there, it's all native. Everything you see there's is not Chinese made. It's made by native people, and everything in there. And my granddaughter, she'll grow up in that environment, and she'll grow up with me saying, saying words to her like when she's eating her food, I'll say "Kanicho," which tastes good, and I'll say words like that to remind her that she's a little different. She's not that she's unique or special, but she's different and she's native, and that she'll grow up in that way. So
Wow, Red Snake, thank you very much.
you're welcome.